All right, everybody, welcome back to The Deep Life. And today we have an extraordinary guest, Kyle Coon, who is a Paralympian, an author, a professional speaker, and exactly what to say certified guide. And Kyle, welcome to The Deep Life.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here.
We were absolutely captivated by the story that you had shared with us very briefly. And we can't wait to dive deeper into this because you lost your eyesight at 6 due to cancer. And you had said that you are pursuing a life without limits. And that phrase right there it really is the epitome of a deep life, living a life of freedom without limitations in so many different ways. So if you don't mind, please share with us kind of your extraordinary life and kind of where it took you from, cancer at such a young age to now being literally a Paralympian.
Yeah, well, all right, children, gather around, gather around the, gather around the fire. It is story time, as I like to say. No, it's to give a very high level view. So like you said, I was actually diagnosed with a rare form of eye cancer called retinoblastoma when I was 10 months old, and went through a lot of years of treatment. And my parents and we pursued every treatment available to us at that time. And so we actually I responded very well to cancer treatment, but of course the cancer kept fighting back and kept coming back stronger than ever before. And so eventually my eyes were just so damaged from the actual cancer treatments themselves that we had no other choice but to remove my eyes. So we had my left eye removed when I was 5 years old, and then my right eye just before I turned 7. And as you and your audience can probably imagine, as a little 6-7 year old kid, I wasn't exactly thinking. I wasn't some philosophical thinker of like, I am going to live a life without limits. I am not going to let anybody define my limitations. All of that great stuff. I just wanted to figure out a way how to play with my friends outside. um, but going from being able to see at least a little bit to not being able to see anything, it was extremely scary. And it was not like while I had been learning things like, we knew that I was going to go blind at some point in my life. And so I had been preparing. I had been learning how to travel with a white cane. I had been learning to read and write in Braille. I was, trying to adapt to the blindness world before I went blind. But even as as you prepare as much as you possibly can, sometimes it just, sometimes you need to actually get into the thick of it to really understand, what it's like. And, and when I finally went totally blind, it was very scary. And so I was very fortunate that my family was connected. We got connected with a gentleman named Eric Weinmeier, who at the time he was starting to make a name for himself as this blind adventure athlete. He had done some pretty cool things like rock climbing, and he had been jumping out of airplanes and
Wow.
all this kind of crazy stuff. And then a few years after we got connected, he became very famous for becoming the first blind person to climb Mount Everest. But so I actually met Eric before he became a worldwide celebrity. And and he and I just sat down, and he just shared a little bit about the things that he did with his life, and challenged me to, just because that I was blind didn't mean that I had to sit on the sidelines. And so he challenged me to embrace the hard stuff. And to try and pursue, a life of purpose, and a life, where I defined my own limits, essentially. And so I decided to, kind of follow in Eric's footsteps, and got into rock climbing, got into, downhill skiing, and just a whole bunch of outdoor adventure type activities. And one thing leads to another down the road, and eventually, you look up, and it's 25 years later, and it's like, oh wow, I've actually lived quite a full and adventurous life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's incredible. I'd like, before you kind of dive deeper into your story, as you hit this athletic portion of your life and then getting into college and the Paralympics, but I'm very curious, as you were so young, losing your eyesight, and then as you grew up, do you feel that your other senses developed more?
It's a very common question, and like I don't have superhuman senses. I'm not, it's not, I'm no Peter Parker getting bit by a spider and, all of a sudden have like, X-ray vision and superhuman strength and all that. It doesn't quite work like that. So what,
Okay.
I don't have exceptional hearing. I don't have exceptional smell or taste. Do I wish I could, hold a glass of wine up to my nose and tell you exactly what ingredients were, made, and, taste a morsel of food and be able to, tell you the exact flavor profile. Sure, I wish I could do that. I cannot. I am not that. What I tell people is that I have to pay attention to my other senses more. So, quite often a lot of people say that, we rely on our eyesight, upwards of like 95% of the time. And so when you don't have your eyesight, you have to tap into and use your other senses more. So it's like my sense of smell isn't better than anyone else's. I just recognize things a little quicker. I process and develop a visual picture of the world through my sense of, smell, taste, touch, and sound. And all those, what all that does is it helps to paint a picture in my mind of what the world is. So I just have to pay. So it's really just a matter of paying attention to my other senses more, rather than it being like superhuman or enhanced, if for lack of a better term.
Sure. Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense.
How old were you when you started getting into like rock climbing and downhill skiing? Was that around the same time, or was it a little bit later?
So I started rock climbing, kind of casually, just as a fun activity, when I was about just after I turned 7, probably just before I turned 8. So right, so pretty soon after I met Eric, because I met Eric just a few months after I lost my sight. And my family was very much of the opinion, well, why wait? Let's just get into it now. So I started pursuing climbing when I was about 8 years old, and then started getting into, my sisters and I actually wound up climbing on our local climbing gym's competitive rock climbing team for a handful of years. After we climbed recreationally for about a year or two, then we got into competitive climbing, and did the competitive climbing circuit as youngsters. And then as as we were climbing competitively, you're interacting with a whole bunch of other families who just love this outdoor lifestyle, and so you start getting into so we start planning family vacations to do like rock climbing and camping trips, outdoor rock climbing and camping trips instead of just gym climbing. And then of course, like, I grew up in the Southeast US. So, naturally, you start hearing about like the mountains of Colorado. And so we, my family got the opportunity when I was probably about 11 or 12 years old to come out to Colorado and learn to ski. So we learned to ski as a family. And then my parents, we had my sisters, my mom, my dad, and I, we all had just such a blast skiing together as a family that my parents offered us kids the choice of, hey, we could do a ski trip every year as a family, or we can do, Christmas presents and, traditional Christmas tree, all that. Like, what do you guys want to do? Like these are your options. And my sisters and I all chose, we would rather do a ski trip every year than do, Christmas presents. So, so every year growing up, from the time I was about, in like fourth or fifth grade, all the way up until I graduated high school, we did a family ski trip around Christmas every year. And so that's how my whole family fell in love with Colorado. And then eventually we all decided that, well, we were kind of tired of the Southeast, and we all felt more at home in Colorado than anywhere else. So that's where we all decided to, over the course of about 4 or 5 years, we all wound up settling.
Oh, okay. So are you in Colorado now?
I am. I'm actually right now. I'm based out of the Olympic and Paralympic Training Center in Colorado Springs, and then the rest of my family is all. I have a sister up in Boulder, and then I have a sister and a brother-in-law in Basalt, Colorado, and then I have a sister, brother-in-law, and niece and nephew in just outside of Vail, and then my parents are in a little town called Carbondale, which is just outside of Aspen.
Wow, amazing. Okay, we're very familiar with Colorado. I have family out there as well they're in Centennial.
Okay, yeah.
But yeah,
so just down the road from me.
Yeah,
up the road, I guess.
Yeah, we've spent much time in Colorado Springs, Denver, Boulder. We've been to Pikes Peak before.
Yeah, I'm right in the shadow of Pikes Peak.
Yeah,
so it's great.
Awesome. Oh my gosh. I mean, well, as wonderful as Colorado is, I just want to jump more into kind of your story
for sure.
Which I'm sure will probably bring Colorado back in the mix. But
it will. It certainly will.
But kind of as your love for skiing and everything evolved, I know that you had mentioned you graduated from college, but that seemed to be almost a maybe, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but perhaps a dark point in your life when you hit some rough patches around that time.
Yeah, you could say it was a dark. It was definitely a dark period of my life.
Maybe darkness leading into light, hopefully.
Yeah. We'll go with that. We'll go with that.
Okay. I'll let you take it from here.
Yeah. So like you have to remember, like, I grew up in the era of so I grew up in this era of everyone saying, oh, you can do or be anything you want to do or be when you grow up. I also, I grew up, I was on the leading edge of the social media. Facebook comes out in 2004. Like, my sisters and I, we all get on, we all wind up getting social media accounts in, like, I don't know, 2008, 2009. And so, like, social media is just starting to take off, and all these stories about these young entrepreneurs and young CEOs, millionaire, billionaire, people, like, you don't need a college degree to be successful. Like, all of these different stories are coming out, and at this point, I had done some pretty neat things, and I had attracted some media attention for some of the stuff that I had done. I had been on the Oprah Winfrey show as a surprise guest to Eric. Back in when I was only like 12 years old. I had gotten some local news coverage for the stuff I was doing as a climber, and then as a wrestler in high school. And then I had also gotten the opportunity to do some pretty neat international trips, with hiking and climbing. And I had been to Peru, I had been to Tanzania. So I had done a whole bunch of pretty neat, nifty stuff.
Yeah.
And and then I graduated from college in just 3 years. And so I rolled into the working world very cocky and very arrogant. And, I had this classic, I say I had this classic millennial mindset of, I am CEO material. So therefore I like, why skip, why not just go straight for the top? So I'm going to apply for every job CEO and above. And so, and like I said, definitely cocky and arrogant. And so I like to tell people that I started climbing my way down the corporate ladder after after all of my CEO applications were going unanswered, so that I started just climbing my way down, 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 down. And it was before you know it, I look up and, it had been about a year. And I was living with, I was living with my partner at the time, and, she had graduated from college a year before me, was working, and, all this different stuff. And, just, so she was supporting us barely. But I was just going deeper and deeper into credit card debt, trying to figure out what I was gonna do. And eventually I walked into a grocery store, applied to be a bag boy, and didn't get that job. So at that point I was, I was pretty darn close to rock bottom, and I had really started picking up, drinking a lot of alcohol, and, that was becoming a crutch. And so one day I woke up and was like, well, something's got to change. And, I'm 30 pounds heavier than I was when I graduated from college. I am, I'm physically and mentally out of shape. So, I have to do something to change the trajectory of my life. And so I decided that I was going to start running. And I did some Googling around on how a blind person runs, and learned that I needed to find someone to run with me to guide me, which, made sense to me. So I found a website that connected blind runners, or people that wanted to, run with people that were open to being sighted guides. And you could plug in your zip code, and it would spit out, a list of people and their contact information, in a 5 or 10 mile radius of your zip code. And so I punched it in. There were 2 people that were fairly close to me, and I sent them both an email. One of them responded. I said, well, beggars can't be choosers, and went and met up with this guy. And he had actually never met a blind person, never guided a blind person. He had just signed up for this website randomly at some race that he had done. And he was like, yeah, I'll give it a shot. I don't really know what I'm doing. And I didn't know what I was doing. So we just kind of bumbled, figured it out. And by the end of the run, we were like, well, it didn't go too horribly, and I guess we can do this again. And so we just continued. We just kept meeting up together, and running a couple times a week. And eventually we just became really, really good friends. And then eventually he started peer pressuring me to get into triathlon. And so that's how I started rolling down that slippery slope.
Wow, that's really cool. It's really cool just how things work out. You can find someone and kind of figure out your way. What was the
before not to interrupt you, Kyle, I want to thank you for your vulnerability, for sure, for sharing not only your childhood but even up into college years. And I think you're a little bit younger than Dan and I, but we too are millennials. And I graduated college 2009, Dan 2010, but just because he was in a 5-year program. So we absolutely understand. And with social media and the heightened, almost, I do want to say, kind of fakeness with everybody's highlight reels, and it it can be very, very hard to take that on emotionally and energetically, and kind of get so much in our heads and thoughts comparatively speaking, that we're not worthy, or because someone's showing us something that they've got more, that we're trying to almost replicate something that someone else has done, but
Yep.
we're our own unique individual persons. And, you know, that's kind of what the deep life is all about, understanding how we can support ourselves and allow this uniqueness of our individuality to develop in a different way that's not, you know, shunned by society. So I very much appreciate your vulnerability and sharing your story there, because I don't think you're the only one who's probably gone through that rock bottom around
Oh
that.
yeah. Oh yeah.
It's kind
No,
of like,
for sure.
yeah, the life gives you the lessons when we're ready to learn them.
That it certainly does. It
My God.
certainly does.
So I just wanted to ask, I'm kind of fascinated by the triathlon
Yeah,
training, because
let's get into
you're
that.
working with somebody who had originally, like, never worked with being a guide for a blind runner. And running, I can kind of see it's kind of natural and comfortable. But how did he guide you to like swim and ride a bike?
Well, so yeah, it's really interesting. So like so so his name's Mike, and so Mike and I, like, we had developed this, pretty good friendship, and just because we were running a lot together. Well, I say running a lot, like I actually run a lot more now than I did 10 years ago when we started running together. But we had started, just we're spending a lot of time together, we're talking, and we developed a really, really great friendship. We had a lot of similar views on stuff, um and he was already a triathlete, and he had done, at that point, I think he had done 8 or 9, I think he had done like 8 or 9 Ironmans, and
Wow.
a bunch of 70.3s, and countless numbers of sprint and Olympic distance triathlons.
So
And
he's probably in good shape.
yeah, he was solid. He was solid athlete.
Yeah.
And he basically was like, yeah, he was like, I want, I just want to recruit you to triathlon. And he's like, I think you have more of a triathlete mindset than a runner's mindset. And like, it's just a good excuse for us to, hang out more, at the end of the day. So,
Yeah.
so I grew up in Florida, so I knew how not to drown.
Okay.
It's an important part.
Yeah, but I had never really been taught, proper freestyle swimming technique or anything like that. So that was a process of Mike and a handful of other triathletes that I met, teaching me how to swim, because there's a difference between swimming and swimming.
Yeah.
There's a big difference. And so I learned how to at least survive in the water, at least in a pool. And in and then the bike was easy, because it was just I already had a tandem bike, and so it was just a matter of Mike getting comfortable, riding on the front of my tandem. And so like that part wasn't too complicated, or too difficult to figure out. And we experimented a lot with swimming, because triathlon is typically takes place in open water. And, well, being totally blind, it's not like I can see where to go to follow the buoy line or anything like that. So there I wasn't the first blind triathlete. People have been doing triathlons as blind or visually impaired individuals since the 1990s. So like we Googled around, we messaged people to see what others were doing, and everyone had their own little system. And eventually we kind of figured out that, okay, we'll tie a bungee cord around my upper thigh and Mike's upper thigh, and we'll swim side by side, and Mike will tap my shoulder to let me know when to turn. And that's still the system I use today. And that's basically kind of the system that I would say 90% of all blind and visually impaired triathletes use these days is, just a bungee cord around somewhere around the leg, or, maybe the hips, and, and then, their guide, tapping them on either the head or the shoulder or the back or something to let them know when to turn. So, but it was definitely a learning process. We experimented with a lot of different things. We experimented with, wrapping some type of tether system around our waists. We experimented with like tying our wrists together, like all kinds of just weird, quirky, crazy stuff that, we'll look back on it and we're like, why did we do that? But yeah, so it was just this big old experiment that we did for, almost 2 years together. And, Mike, wound up guiding me, and I think, 10 or 11 or 12 different triathlons over the course of those 2 years. We did, we did 2 half Ironmans together. We did a full Ironman together. And, we did at least, we did a marathon together. We did a bunch of half marathons together. Like we did a bunch of stuff together. So
yeah, absolutely incredible. Now, the Ironman that you did with Mike in 2018, is that the one that you did in record time?
No. So the one I did with Mike, so my first Ironman I did in 2016, and that was Ironman Boulder. And so that one took me almost 16 hours to do. So took a long time. I had a decent swim for a first Ironman, and then it was quite the grind on the bike. And then, got to the run, and, you're feeling jazzed up and pumped up, and, ran the first mile, walked the next 25, and then ran the last, basically the last 400 meters. So it was a slog of a marathon.
Wow, okay.
But after I did Ironman Boulder, that was kind of when I had made the decision that I was going to move to Colorado. And so I was in this process of moving to Colorado, and I had found employment at that time. And so I had worked for a nonprofit organization for a couple of years. And then I also, I was at the time when I decided that I was going to move to Colorado, I was working for the Department of the Navy in corporate operations. So I made this decision to quit my well-paying, cushy government job to move across the country and rent a room from my parents, and start looking for different employment and trying to figure out what I really wanted to do with the rest of my life. And that gave me a lot of time on my hands, and so I just filled that time with training. So I spent a lot of time swimming, biking, and running. And well, it turns out the more you swim, the more you bike, the more you run, the faster you get. And well, eventually, and basically I got faster than Mike. And so I had to start finding new guides. I had to, expand my network of people to train with and race with, and got connected with, a great group of, just great community of just outdoor enthusiasts and athletes in the Roaring Fork Valley of Colorado. And then in 2017, I decided to do my second Ironman, which was in Arizona, and was guided by a good friend of mine who was a tremendous athlete. And so he and we did Ironman Arizona together, and we did it in just under 12 hours in 2017. And I had shaved off like, I don't know, like basically
Yeah.
4 hours off of my
Mm.
previous Ironman time. And so I looked at that and I was like, well, if I can go under 12 hours, what if I tried to, go for, how much faster could I get?
Mm.
And I didn't have a triathlon coach at this time. I was just making it up as I went along. And at the beginning of 2018, I heard about this camp, that an elite triathlete an elite visually impaired female was running out of San Diego, and she invited, I contacted her. She invited me to come to the camp to learn a little bit more, and showed up at that camp, got connected with even more people and more guides, and triathlon specific coaches and all that. Turns out a few years of slogging away at Ironman actually had made me decently quick at that point. And I connected with a coach there, and and so she started coaching me, and coached me for 2000, the entire 2018 year. And she happened to have one of her business partners was a tremendously good Ironman athlete, and so she connected me with him, and he was the one that actually guided me at Ironman Arizona in 2018, and that was when I was able to sneak under the 11-hour mark, and at that point I had become the first totally blind athlete to go under 11 hours for an Ironman. And there have been a handful of visually impaired athletes who have some usable sight, but they're not completely, they're not totally blind, that have gone faster than me since then. But at that time, I was the first totally blind athlete to go under 11 hours, and then at that point, it was once you're I had gotten some, my name had been starting to circulate through the triathlon community. And so USA Triathlon reached out to me, and they said, hey, they just announced that visually impaired men are going to be included in the Tokyo Paralympic Games. What do you think about coming and actually racing against some of the best guys in the world? And
Wow. I just got chills.
and so I was like, well, I could try to go faster at Ironman, or I could try to see how I actually stacked up against, the most elite athletes in the world. And so I made the decision to step down in distance and up in intensity, and got the opportunity to move to the Olympic and Paralympic Training Center at the beginning of 2019, and have been living here ever since then. And it's quite amazing, when you dedicate your life full time to trying to be the best at being one of the best in the world. You wind up doing a lot of right now it's a lot of swim, bike, run, eat, sleep, repeat. But it's just quite amazing to look back at at me 8, 9, 10 years ago, and now what I consider a bad workout or a bad race time or anything like that, I would have thought that would have been untouchable 6, 7, 8 years ago, which is it's quite incredible. So
This whole story is
yeah.
incredible. I mean, wow, what unbelievable accomplishment. Thank you for sharing all of that. How did you ever think at such a young age, perhaps with, what you had gone through as cancer, becoming blind, that you'd be an Olympic athlete?
It was definitely not something that I ever thought about.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, you watch the Olympics on TV, and then I also like, but the Paralympics were not. The Paralympics have really only kind of started to come into, it really has only been with the growth of social media and streaming and all that the Paralympic movement has gained a lot of traction.
Sure.
And I actually, got to give a big nod um, to UK Sport and Channel 4 over in Great Britain, because they did such an outstanding job of coverage at the 2012 London Paralympic Games, and they basically they were one of the first ones to give just blanket equal coverage to both the Olympics and Paralympics,
Oh,
and
wow.
it showed people that Paralympic athletes were actually elite athletes. They weren't.
Mm.
It wasn't. These weren't people that were just participating in sport. It wasn't just feel good inspirational stories. These were truly elite athletes. And then the coverage took a little bit of a step back with Rio, but then in 2018 the U.S. Olympic Committee changed their name to the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee,
Mm.
and they allocated like equal resources to both Olympic and Paralympic athletes, and then NBC stepped up their coverage of the Paralympic Games in Tokyo, and now we're set to have the biggest audience, the most coverage ever, for Paris coming up here this summer. So I as a kid, or even growing up until really until I found my way into the world of triathlon, I didn't really pay attention to Paralympic sport. I didn't really know very much about it, and it was never a dream or a desire of mine to become that level of athlete.
Mm.
Um, I really just wanted, as a kid, I was a rock climber. I was a skier. I just wanted to be a dirt bag. I just wanted to camp and climb and, do all the cool adventure stuff. I had no desire to be a high performance athlete. But as I got deeper and deeper and deeper into the world of triathlon and swim, bike, run, all of that, I found this fascination and love of trying to find that edge, and find my limit, and then to see if I could push those limits a little bit further. And when USA Triathlon came to me, and they said, hey, you could, you have the potential to go toe to toe with some of the best athletes in the world. Do you want to give it a shot? It was kind of too tempting an offer,
Yeah.
and so yeah, I jumped at it and pursued it, and it's been my life for the last 6 or so years, and it's there are times when you know I I I definitely I look up and I'm like, oh man, am I really doing anything, or am I just am I just a piece of meat that happens to be really kind of sort of fast at swim, bike, run. So there, it's definitely it's a unique experience, and and being in the high performance world, the high performance sporting world is very unique, because you're surrounded by um, athletes and high performers that you know the standards are so high that
Mm.
if you come just an iota short of meeting a standard, you feel like you failed. But then, compared to, so I have to constantly keep in mind and compare myself to my past. And it's like, okay, like the first time I ever ran a 5K, I think I ran like 30 plus minutes or something like that. And like, now now I'm running a, 17:30 or an 18-minute now I consider an 18-minute 5K slow for me. That's coming at the end of a swim, but after coming off of a swim and a bike.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
So trying to keep those things in perspective has been a learning process.
Yeah, for sure. You mentioned before, like when you were young and lost your sight originally, that philosophy wasn't really a part of it, and you weren't thinking at the time that you were going to be the one who defines your limits. When did that mindset, or when did that kind of philosophy start to make its way in, or has this sort of all just happened?
I think it kind of, I started kind of developing that philosophy probably in like middle school, high school. I definitely, I had fought, like I said, I had followed, Eric Weinmeier had become a very good friend and a mentor. And, he had written a couple of best-selling books at that point, and was kind of, teaching, preaching and teaching his no barriers mindset and philosophy, and just everything that I was reading through, just studying of history, and just learning through my own experimentation with sport and life and all this. I had this in my head that like it is it is my choice to, if I want to have limits on myself, then I can put those limits on. If others want to put limits on me, then it's up to me to prove to them that either I am, those limits are, those limits are true, or I can choose to break those limits and break that mold and prove people wrong. So it went both ways. And like, because I very much believe that there are, we do, like, anyone who says they're just purely internally driven and motivated, I think they're lying, because we're all driven both internally and externally. Like every single one of us, I think, has this desire to prove somebody wrong, whether that's prove ourselves wrong, prove others wrong. Like we all have this balance of internal and external drive, and so over the course of my life, I learned that I have a very powerful internal drive, but I also have a very powerful external drive, and it's a matter of balancing those two out and employing them strategically. And so ultimately, when I decided to have this this life without limits philosophy, that kind of I kind of started using that phrase probably toward the end of college, and it was a way of encapsulating and embodying this idea that, look, there are limits to what we can do in life. Like I think we're silly to not acknowledge that. Like, look, as someone who's totally blind, I'm not going to be an open heart surgeon. Like I'm not going to be like, you don't want me cutting, cracking you open and operating on you. I'm not going to be a fine art critic, or something like that. Like, there are some limitations. Like as of right now, I cannot drive. Like, well, I can drive a car, but I'm probably going to kill myself and injure a lot of people if I try to do that. And until we get some until Elon or some other people figure out the technology side of things, and we get some laws passed that allow driverless vehicles. That it's not happening anytime soon. So like I'm silly to say that there are no limitations, because there are limits to what we can do. But I think that it is up to me to find where those limits are and then see if I can push them a little further and expand those limits, and and grow and make the box bigger for the people that come after me, because 40, 50, 100 years ago, it was unthinkable that someone who's blind or visually impaired could do a fraction of what I've been able to do. And back in the 1980s, 1990s, it was unthinkable that a blind person could climb mountains, jump out of an airplane, or climb Mount Everest or something like that. But Eric broke the mold and did it. And then I and others came along and just built upon what he did. And so like we build upon each other, and we continue to we find what the limitations are, whether they are limitations imposed by by society or limitations imposed by ourselves, and we continue to try to find those limits and expand them, and push beyond them, so that one day it will be, there will be no limits. And so I that's kind of where the philosophy came from, and it's taken and it's ever growing and it's ever changing. So one day like today my limit might only be like, I'm only swimming 2,000 meters today. Tomorrow the limit might be the limit might be 3,000. Or anything along those lines. So like our limits change, and nothing in life is set in stone. And because look, I mean, and we use that phrase like set in stone, but guess what? Stone can shift given enough time. So
yeah, absolutely. You said that so beautifully. I loved the way that you encapsulated that as kind of, we truly are limitless beings. We haven't, I think, in my opinion, tapped into the fullness of the potential that we are as humans.
yeah.
I absolutely understand your limit that, yes, probably not going to be a surgeon or art critic. I love the humor that you bring to this conversation. But yeah, who knows where science, where technology, where breaking the limits of our mind are going to bring us as humans in the decades to come. And I feel like you're at the forefront of it, and such a beautiful example for not just blind people, but really anyone. I mean, it's just truly an incredible story. And the way that you spoke so eloquently just now about kind of the philosophies of your life and how you've adopted them, I can understand how you have become a professional speaker and speak to audiences. So I'd love to get into that and kind of what you speak about when you go to well, please inform me, like if you're going to groups of people, or if you're going to schools or companies, whatever it may be, how you talk to them and what you do speak about when you do have those events and engagements.
Yeah, so I definitely, I mean, all of the above. I've spoken to just small community groups, to schools, to to Fortune 500 companies, and it varies. The messaging is all pretty simple. In order to live, because it does revolve around this life without limits philosophy. And in order to, to find our limits and to push beyond them, we have to keep an eye on our vision, and like we have to know where we're going in order to get there. Like, you know, you know, can we set out on an adventure and, get to a destination? Absolutely. We can get there if we don't know where we're going. And, that's part of the fun of exploring. But in the world of, in the world of high performance, in the world in the worlds of business, and, trying to maximize our time and efficiency and all that, it really does help if we know where we're going. And so I talk a lot about, knowing our vision, knowing where it is we're going, and where we're trying to get to, and what we're trying to do. And that vision can be super, that vision can be pretty broad. And then we drill down into, into the mission, into, into our core mission. And then I speak a lot about the values that drive us as individuals. And then, expand that out to, the values that drive us, as a company or an organization. And then I use examples from the, various adventures and sporting events and stuff that I've done over the years to illustrate those, those points and those values and everything. So, and then more recently, I've been, I've been doing more corporate trainings and stuff, and helping people elevate their conversational excellence, at the end of the day. So,
Tell
and
us
so
a little
that,
bit about that. That you're the exactly what to say, right?
yeah. So exactly what to say. I got introduced to the exactly what to say methodology, or brand, probably about 5 or 6 years ago. I was in the process. I had already written my book, but I was in the process of trying to find a publisher. I was trying to, figure out, okay, like, can I actually sell this book? All that kind of stuff. And, I was just browsing around and happened across a podcast. And there was this gentleman that on the pod, he was a guest on a podcast, and his name was Phil Jones. And he was, it's funny how, if you say something in a British accent, it just sounds funny. And like, he just had this eloquent way of putting things, and, just speaking plain truth. And so I was like, oh, I like this guy. He's kind of quirky, kind of funny. And so I started following him, and, got his books, and, got his Audible programs and all that, and just studied his stuff, and studied his YouTube channel and all that. And a couple of years ago, he started this exactly what to say program, and he started bringing on people to be certified guides. So people that could teach, teach his method, teach the exactly what to say methodology. And since I'd been studying it for so long, last year I reached out to him and brought him on my podcast, interviewed him, and we had a great chat. And after that podcast, he suggested, hey, maybe we have a chat about, maybe we chat about you becoming a certified guide. And so, and it's fascinating because, so my degree in college was communication, because I'm fascinated. Yeah. So I'm fascinated by communication, like, because, we all say that, sticks and stones may break our bones, but words will never hurt me. But it's not true. Because words are extremely powerful. We, and again, we have all these sayings, actions speak louder than words. Well, words speak pretty darn loud, I think.
Mhm.
And, but, and so with exactly what to say, it fit very much in line with a lot of my philosophies in that, look, the people that wind up being super high performers and super successful in, business, in life, they they do simple things really, really well, and they do simple things even better. Basically, they do the basics to a very high standard on a very consistent basis, and they know exactly what to say, when to say it, and how to make it count. And so, what as a exactly what to say certified guide, um, what I do is I help people. We break down what conversational excellence is. We talk about, okay, like how do we elevate our conversations instead of just counting up the number of conversations we have? How do we make more of those conversations count, essentially? And so we have these pillars of conversational excellence, and we have a whole bunch of just we call them magic words or magic phrases that can help people become more curious. And if you stay curious for long enough, you get to a position of empathy. And and once you have empathy, now you have the context to be able to offer advice. And and then you have the courage to take action on whatever whatever it is you're looking for, whether you're looking to sell a product or sell an idea, or anything. And and so it's all of these things woven in together. And really, whether we're trying to be high performers with our conversations, or we're trying to be a high performance athlete, training and getting to the Olympic or Paralympic games, or we're trying to be a high performing real estate agent or salesperson or anything along those lines. It all comes down to these basic conversational excellence tenets. So it's been a journey. It's been a lot of fun, and it's a lot of fun to get messy with it. And it's it's one of those things that, like, you gotta understand that it's fun to play in the mess, and that's where the magic happens. Is
Mm.
you know I'm not you know I'm not a perfect conversationalist. I'm not the best at it, but um I'm always in rookie mode, and so I'm always staying curious. And if we stay curious for long enough, again, we get to that position of empathy, and then we get on to the step of courage of being able to ask, and we only get what we ask for.
Absolutely. Wow, that's
Mhm.
wonderful. And I feel like such a very wonderful way to kind of wrap things up. But before we do so, you briefly touched upon the book that you wrote in 2021.
Yep.
So I want to talk a little bit about that, and then where people can find it. And we'd love to link it in the show notes for anybody who's interested in reading that. But please tell us a little bit about that book. It's Discovering a Life Without Limits.
Yep. So it's Discovering a Life Without Limits: How Cancer Took My Sight, Blindness Gave Me Vision, and the Mountains Let Me Live. And what it really does is
Love the
it,
title.
yeah. So and really the book details my, my story growing up until the time I got into triathlon.
Mm.
Because my triathlon story and my high performance sporting life is a book in and of itself. And
Sure.
I felt that it was really important for people to understand where I came from, um, and share some of the life lessons that I learned, because those early years, that's when I was discovering how to live a life without limits. I was discovering how to find the limitations and push the boundaries and test them. And so people can get it directly from my they can get it directly from my publisher, walnutstreetpublishing.com. I also think I have some links to buy it on my website, which is just kylecoon.com. So yeah, or you could just Google me, Kyle Coon, and you'll find it. you'll
Fabulous.
you'll
Awesome.
find me, and you'll find it. But
Perfect.
yeah,
And
that's how people, and then it's also available on Amazon Kindle as well.
awesome. We'll make sure to link that in the show notes. Absolutely. Oh, Kyle, I can't thank you enough. Like I had mentioned, just about your vulnerability, what you've shared, and mostly your inspiration. I mean, like I was saying to you, I got chills half the time just as you speak, and it's captivating, and it just leaves me with a lot of contemplation about life and purpose and meaning, and how to, break these limits that I've placed on myself or that I've either adapted from society. So is there anything that you feel you want to, close with that you might have missed? If not, that's completely fine. Like I said, we'll link all of this in the show notes, as well as putting your website and any additional, anything else that you'd like us to put in there. You just let us know as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, just remember that just do the basics to a high standard consistently. I always tell people all the time, there is no difference between, me as a Paralympic athlete, or anybody else. There's really no difference. The difference between, people that, have huge amounts of success, and the people that feel that they're struggling, or that they're they're not going to have success, is that the people, look, we keep it stupid simple. We do simple well, and we do simple better. And you just have to always be in rookie mode. You have to always be willing to stay curious. You have to be willing to ask questions. You have to be willing to be authentic, and you have to be open. And that's something that I have learned over time. And like, to me, you said several times that I'm being vulnerable on this, when speaking to you guys, but to me, that's not being vulnerable. I'm just speaking the truth. And like, there's no like, I believe that there's no point in hiding from the truth. I've never believed in pulling punches. Just trying to, we're just all in this world trying to do the best we can, and to elevate ourselves and the people around us. So keep it stupid simple. Just do simple well, and do simple better, and you'll find your way to keeping an eye on your vision, and eventually you'll live a life without limits.
Oh, perfect. Thank you, Kyle. We appreciate you accompanying us today on The Deep Life.